All right, today we're going to have another video on blockchain. Today I'd like to talk particularly about governance. And in this discussion, let's start with a basic definition of governance. That's kind of cheesy, right? But let's try it. From the dictionary, we find the action or manner of governing. Oh, you've got to be kidding. That didn't help me with anything. There must be as many ways to govern as there are people who govern. So let's dig a little bit deeper and look for a process-based definition and to find out what governance really might mean. And our good friend Wikipedia might actually help us in this case. And we find that it says the process of interaction and decision-making among actors involved in a collective problem that lead to the creation, reinforcement, or reproduction of social norms and institutions. Well, I think we can go with that one. Really, the governance that we're talking about today is how to manage the people on a blockchain and how to manage the development of a blockchain. So what we want to do then is talk about governance in a blockchain in two different areas. We're going to talk about the technology, which basically is the development of the blockchain. And then we're going to talk about governance within the blockchain itself. Because blockchain is not just like any application that you deploy. Blockchain is building a network of like business type people who get together to collaborate in such a way that blockchain benefits the business by developing trust mechanisms that allow seamless interaction between those businesses. So governing the building of a blockchain requires a decentralized set of governance among the founders of the network. Let's go back to that example of TradeLens. The initial partnership was between Maersk and IBM. IBM was the builder of the technology. Maersk was the subject matter expert in the shipping industry, being one of the major players. Then, in addition to that, they had significant input from many other shippers and supply chain operators around the world. Okay, so to manage this kind of governance during the design and development phases, you want to use an established standard framework like COBIT or ITIL or ISO, CMMI, or FAIR that can be driven by members involved in the development process. The reason you want to use a standard framework is because everybody understands the standard frameworks. So in being able to use an established framework, then you can easily help the players to understand how the process will be governed. Then when that is established, when the framework is in place to govern the development, you want to use a governance, risk, and compliance, or GRC process that is specific to the industry that will be used by the blockchain. The main difference in this part of the development is to remember that a blockchain deployment is not as simple as deploying an app. You have the dimensions of members that will be working as part of the network as later as it follows on. So then, the second half of this governance package that we talk about is the network governance. The network governance is the rules that the blockchain is going to operate under. Those rules that are embedded in the smart contracts and in the actual functioning of the blockchain, and what data is going to go in the blockchain that has to flow through and go from party to party. So in determining these rules, they can vary from autonomous rules determined solely within the blockchain code, or they can be self-governed networks that enforce it from outside the blockchain, such as a set of rules that each party lives by. And then, of course, there can be variations between a fully self-governed versus a fully code and blockchain governed. So there's various combinations all the way through that spectrum. So as with our definition that we gave at the beginning from our friend Wikipedia, it's solely determined by the participants involved in the collective decision-making process. So the first concept of developing a blockchain governance policy in that network is to determine the levels of self versus system governance that's desired for the system to work well. I don't want to make that sound too simple, because it really isn't. Using TradeLens as the example today, I introduced them in our last video. They use a permission matrix where those that are involved in the logistics industry, they join the network, and based on the organizational role that they play, whether they're a shipper or whether they're a container cargo carrier or ground shipments, any one of those pieces of the process all the way around the world, depending on their role and the type of data that they would be generating and needing out of the blockchain, they're given consistent sets of access to that data based on those roles and data types they need. This type of access is totally a systemic governance process where the code in the blockchain allows data to flow based solely on those two items. The members of the network are considered what they called in the website trust anchors, and they're known to the network based on their cryptographic identities. So from the outside, this means that you as a member of that network can use other participants. You can see them, and if you want to do business with them, you can then open a collaborative arrangement to do business with them, versus an anonymous blockchain such as Bitcoin, where the members or those who hold wallets are not known to the others on the network. So realistically, what you have here is two types of governance that take place at two different times. During the development, you have to have a governance process that flows through the design, development, deployment period. And then you have to determine during this time of development what kind of governance package is going to be the follow-on governance when the network is fully operating. You can get more information and examples of this by going to TradeLens and seeing the kind of organization that they've set up and the kind of people. They have a wealth of information there on the IBM blockchain that was set up for that particular business. So if you like what you hear here, comment below. I'll try to answer those questions when they come up. And please remember to subscribe. Thank you.